No?
Yeah, we're going to your decision.
Are we ready on the right, ready on the left?
Somebody's.
I'll wait till Larry finishes his supper.
Go for it.
I'm ready. Okay. Well, in that case, today is June 5th, 2024, and we will begin the Colfax City meeting for the session. It doesn't say CDBC, but session. Could we have Lori Adams give the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Now, City Clerk, would you take the roll?
Councilmember Hilberg,
Here,
Councilmember McCauley. Here. Mayor Douglas.
present.
And let it be known that Councilmember Burris and Mayor Pro Tem Loman are absent this evening.
Okay, next on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comment? Yeah.
Okay. You get to be a star, Aaron.
Thank you. Hello, my name's Harry Anderson, and I'm here kind of on behalf of the 3rd of July celebration. And as one of the council members, maybe more than one know, Colfax made the front page of the Auburn Journal about this thing. And thank you for whoever reported it. It was actually like a transcript of the meeting. There was no bias. It was very fair, I think, for a change. It was very nice to see that. But the other day I was downtown, as we've been working with Caroline at the bakery, putting up signage and what have you. And so I stepped into one of the other stores, and I was told that Lisa and her company are charging more for the booth than they were last year. And that she was a Bay Area company, and on and on and on, negative, 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 negative. And I simply said, well, all I can tell you is this. If you're raised inside the box, that's all you know. And have somebody who's been raised outside the box, they might know something a little different. So rather than beat up everything, the goal of this is to help the town, not something personal, which is what it sounded like was being passed around town. But let's see how it goes. I mean, only had 4 months to make this thing work, and we are trying very hard to make it come together for the benefit of all the people that come up here and enjoy it, and for the town. So I just wanted to say that I got factual information that proves that the booth price, for those that are listening on Zoom, didn't want to take advantage of the free air conditioning down here and delicious cookies. The rumor mill, you're wrong. The prices are the same as what you did last year. So I wanted to take advantage of this medium to get that across for those that don't come. And so I thank you for the time, and thank you, council, for letting me speak.
Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, hearing none, we move on to the public hearing of the 2024 Community Development Block Grant funding opportunities. City Manager, would you please introduce the speaker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Tonight, we have Lori Adams and Beth Dodd from Adams Ashby here to discuss. This is a public hearing in accordance with CDBG requirements and review the 24 CDBG requirement funding opportunities. and direct staff to begin engineering to prepare for the CDBG grant application anticipated in August. And it's all you, Lori.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to grab my
Yep,
other
that works.
glasses. That age. I have to change them. I'm unable to do bifocal, so. All righty. Well, thank you so much for making time this evening and those who are joining us to have this conversation. CDBG program, the Community Development Block Grant Program, is a vital part of funding for communities. And the funding comes available every year, and we are required to do public outreach and have conversations about what the city is looking at using these funds for, to educate the community on what they are, how they're used, how they apply, what the parameters are, get ideas from the community on how they believe that those funds might need to be considered for the community at large, with all of those little parameters included. So this is the time and place where we are going to be providing that information, sharing the ideas that the city has currently, getting some direction, and answering questions related to that. So we have provided an outline in the staff report to the city council that's available online, also available here this evening, or at any time that someone might want to request that information. So that is an item that they can access. Also want to point out that we do have some items available here this evening, and that will stay here and be available to the public in the lobby of City Hall related to fair housing, which is an item that we definitely want to make sure that we're promoting and furthering access to information related to fair housing as a part of our CDBG program and contract. And we have some amazing cookies that if you're watching online, I don't know if we have any attendees online, you still have time to get down here and partake. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and start with the presentation that we have provided this evening. Please know that, we are willing to answer questions. So if something sparks or triggers a conversation, please interrupt me. I would want this to be kind of a free flow of information, not just Lori talking. Although you give me a mic and I feel like I have a stage, like a little kid. So as Ron mentioned, my name is Lori Adams with Adams Ashby Group. My colleague is Beth Dodd, and we work with the city in helping guide your use of these funds and then also the implementation of these funds. So we've been a partner with the city for many years and have assisted in a few successful projects with CDBG funding. And now we have another opportunity to put that in place. We're going to be providing information related to the programs and projects that are allowed. So we're going to talk about what opportunities you have available to you and provide education and answer questions around the CDBG funds. There are some acronyms that we have. So one of those is the NOFA, the Notice of Funding Availability. And that is what we're going to be discussing tonight, is the 2024 NOFA that we're anticipating to be released. So next slide. So under the 2024 program NOFA, we are expecting that release to occur in July. And they're saying the last week, last day probably of July. So that's their goal, is to hit that target date. So we're looking at July 31, 2024 as the NOFA being released. That NOFA is going to consist of approximately $44 million. That is funding that is provided through our HUD allocation, through the Congressional Allocation of Community Development Block Grant at the level of Washington, D.C., flows into HUD. HUD then gives that funding over to the state of California in a direct allocation to the state of California for small communities. There also are what they call non-entitlement funds, which is the funding that goes into the state of California. And then there's entitlement funds, and those go direct to communities that are Los Angeles, San Francisco, some of our larger urban communities have a direct access to those. But the city of Colfax participates in the state allocation, which is non-entitlement, and their allocation for funding under this program is $44 million, approximately $44 million this year. That says approximate because the state will sometimes have rollback money that gets put into this NOFA that wasn't expended in other years. So that can increase at times. The community is allowed to apply for $3.6 million maximum. So that is your application maximum that you have access to under this NOFA. Way that works is there are different elements of applications that you can put in, and that total cannot exceed 3.6 million. But of course, we have limits within the applications that are allowed. The first application is the over-the-counter application. And over-the-counter means that you are applying funds for a specific business or infrastructure to support a business, multifamily housing rehab, public facilities, or improvement projects, including anything that supports housing that's a public infrastructure component can also be included in that. And that OTC program is not rated or ranked. It's not a competitive program. It is literally you meet the criteria. It's first come, first serve. So your application gets submitted, you get in line, and then they fund down the list until the money is gone. That application maximum is 3.3 million. Okay. Then
Can
they
I,
allow.
can I interrupt a second?
Absolutely.
You said that it's first come, first served,
For the over the counter, yes. The
Okay.
OTC. Mhm.
and the 3.3 million, is that what that is?
That's the maximum that you can apply for under that. Mhm.
So it just strikes me that $44 million isn't very much considering that it's the whole state of California.
It's the whole state of California non-entitlement. So it's the small cities, small communities.
Right. But
Mhm.
there's a lot of small communities
There are,
that are
yes.
wanting that money, right?
Correct.
So part of what we need to do then is obviously submit a good grant and put ourselves in the best position. Do you have any way of estimating or appraising whether or not we actually have a good chance to get it?
So if you don't put your hat in the ring, you won't get it. I can tell you that. We last year had, yes, how many did we have? 6 application. So we had 7 applications submitted in our office within the first 2 hours of the application being opened. And all 6 of them were funded. 7 of them would have been funded, but they had a little oopsie on, they have a growth control ordinance that's not allowed. Otherwise it would have been funded as well. So it's a matter of having your application ready to go, meeting all the threshold requirements, which is what we assist with. And one of the reasons we're here early is to ensure that your engineering can get done and your NEPA can get done in order to put you in that position to be able to make that application happen within the first hour or 2 of the application opening so that we can get it uploaded and submitted. Mhm.
So the chances are decent then, not.
Well, it all depends on how many other people are getting their application in within the first few hours, but we try to position you as close as we can to meeting that goal. And then you have to wait and see who else is submitted as well. But there's no guarantee. The only guarantee is if you don't submit, then you won't get funded. So
I always say that your chances of winning in the state lottery are almost identical whether or not you buy a ticket.
my dad won.
Well,
Actually,
okay,
so-
somebody has to win.
Yeah, it was in 1989, but he bought a ticket. So the other process that we have is a competitive process. So they allow us to apply for up to 2 competitive applications at $300,000 each. And the competitive applications are applications that are public service, which is going to be your nonprofit support, and the planning technical assistance grants, which are grants that assist you in getting ready for another application or doing a study that is related to a national objective or a project that you would then be making application for, or you need data on in order to better your community related to the individuals that we're working to serve. So those are the two over the counter. So, and there's variations to the 3.6 million. So you could do one OTC, one program, one competitive. I forgot about the program, the OTC programs that they threw in on us. So sorry about that. There's also the OTC program, and the OTC program is going to be your housing rehab program or your home buyer program. Those programs used to be called OOR rehab, which you go into individuals who own homes and you can do upgrades to those homes if they meet the income criteria. For example, if you have a senior program that is going to assist seniors in making their homes ADA accessible so that they can age in place, that would be an example of an owner-occupied rehab program. Or it could just generally be you have a family that's very large in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath home. You could go in, and if there was an overcrowding situation, you could add a bedroom, you could add a bathroom in order to make that home large enough to manage the household. It could be a solar program. It could be a weatherization program where you're just focusing in on replacing some of the old equipment that's out there and some of the heating and the air conditioning challenges that can occur in a home. Or it could be emergency repairs for roofs, windows, some of the major systems, electrical systems. You can focus those programs as well. So there's lots of different things you can do, but the focus is working specifically with those individuals who meet that income criteria. And the home buyer program supports persons purchasing a home that meet the income criteria. So you're usually working with individuals at 70 to 80% of the median income. We're not dipping down into the 30, 40, or 50%. You're up there at that level where there's that gap where they could almost buy that house, but they're just missing that little bit of support. And this program, the home buyer program, can provide down payment assistance to get them into that home. So those are what we call the over-the-counter programs. And you can apply for up to $1.5 million in that program. And I believe that we also have code enforcement that falls under that program, so that if you have a code enforcement program, you can couple your code enforcement program with a housing rehab component, where if you have a lot of violations with code enforcement, then they can apply for housing rehab in order to make those repairs and to bring that home up to code and compliance. So
If I read this right, that additional program, that doesn't come off your 3.6 million. It's another 1.5 in
it doesn't
addition.
come off the 3.3 million.
Okay.
It would be 300, I'm sorry.
Because
Yes,
it shows
it
it's
does.
plus. So you could get your 3.6 because it used the competitive in addition to the project, but then you can also get the program.
Then the maximum would be 3.6 million total. So you could apply for an OTC project up to 3.3 million.
Oh, okay.
An
Gotcha.
OTC program up to 1.5 million.
Okay. So it was missing the up to. Now I
Yeah.
understand. Gotcha.
Thank you for that. We'll add that to our. Yeah, so
Yeah,
we'll
that
add
point
that.
was like, wait,
up
these numbers
to-
aren't adding up anymore. I'm confused.
We'll add that. Thank you for that
Okay.
clarification. Yes. Yes, because it's very confusing. There's a lot of little details in this program, which that's why these workshops are so great, because the more you're educated, then the more creative you can become with these funds and find how they meet the needs within your community. Okay, any other questions related to that? So we have OTC projects, OTC programs, and then our two competitive components, which is your public service and some examples on that. And we'll have a more detailed slide with examples, but that's going to be like your Meals on Wheels. You could do daycare assistance. It's pretty darn creative on public services, but you're working with nonprofit organizations, not for profit. That's one of the key differences. And you're focused in on individuals who are at or below the 80% of income. So that's a supportive component. And my favorite one is, do y'all have a city pool? No? Okay. It might be on the list. I know a lot of communities have them. They're the big red hole of funding in a general fund. So, right. So these programs are like one of those that you could, get $300,000, and anybody in the community that meets that income requirement, you can actually pay for their entrance to the pool for, the season, plus, provide some of the, swim support and things like that. But this is a good way to fill that gap if you did have that gap. that 300,000 you might not need all 300, but it would be a recreation fund where we have one community that took the funds, had a recreation program, and then were able to give scholarships to families so that their kids could participate in some of the events that were occurring through the recreation program that normally they wouldn't have been able to afford to participate. So this is one of those kind of creative ways that you could use CDBG funds.
Yeah, just in your opinion,
Mhm.
is a more diversified application have a better chance of success than something that's asking for only one thing?
There's no scoring criteria on diverse
Mhm.
applications or how much you apply for. It really does not matter. The over the counter is a first come, first serve. On your competitive programs, it's about need. It's about being able to show the need and how you're filling a need.
So I see a lot of variety in things that we could fund.
Mhm. Yep. A lot of variety. So when we get into the competitive components, which are the nonprofit organizations, it's about having an established documented need because they do want to see third-party documentation. They want to see where you potentially have had conversations. It's in the newspaper about this particular problem. And it's a documented problem that these funds will fix and that you have solutions on how to continue to support those programs after this funding is no longer available. They don't want this funding to become the catalyst of every year you're making that application. They want to see that you have a partner that is bridging a gap or expanding their program to meet a need.
Just a casual look around town shows a lot of things that we could do.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep. Okay. So our next slide is national objective. So this is where we are talking about the critical part of the application that you must meet in order to even be considered an eligible application. So when we look at national objective, you'll see that we have the first three, which is the low to moderate income, the slum and blight, and the urgent need. I would say that 99% of our applications fall under the low mod category. Slum and blight is based on area or spot basis. Many communities have not, since RDA has been taken away from our communities' structures, we don't have a lot of areas now that are designated as slum and blight because of the negative connotation that brings and also the impact that it has on the value of properties. So they don't take those actions quite as readily as they used to when we had the RDA in line. And urgent need is going to be based on that emergency component when you do have a fire or some sort of a national disaster declaration is when that one would come into play. So we don't see those as often, but we will live in the area of low to mod. And that is where Colfax does have a few challenges. You only have a certain portion of your community that does meet that low mod percentage base, which is what you're seeing now and where you're doing some of the road work that you're having. We did an income survey and we're able to identify those areas as meeting that low mod criteria. So we were able to do some work in those parts of town. But I believe now you actually have an area map that we are able to utilize to identify low mod areas rather than necessarily having to do a full income survey as we have in the past. So what low mod means, it's persons, individuals, families, or households whose income are no more than 80% of the county area median income. So there's a beautiful chart that we get every year from HUD that HCD reformulates and add factors into it. It really is the same information, but they just make it look different. And they publish that every year. That actually has just been released. And every year it goes up slightly in what that income level is. And that is how we determine what areas in the community that you are able to do your projects in based on the low mod criteria when we're looking at an over-the-counter project. That's something that we have to be mindful of because when you're doing a project, it has to be focused on that area that meets that criteria and service that particular part of your community. So we're not able to do a full road project that covers the entire city because then it would be a citywide project and your city on the citywide doesn't meet that low mod criteria. But if we are doing a neighborhood street, then those are the individuals who utilize that street on a regular basis, and then therefore it would qualify.
You said the Placer report was just released. Do you know what those numbers are off the top of your head?
I don't.
Okay.
No, I do not.
All right.
Beth can look it up, which is she's headed for that right now. Then when we're looking at your OTC programs, those are normally considered 100% because the individuals who participate in an owner-occupied rehab program or that participate in a home buyer program, or if they were tagged in your code enforcement as needing to have a repair, would go through an application process and would have to meet that criteria automatically. So those are considered 100%. So that low mod criteria would be managed through the access of the individuals using the program. Do you have another question?
Yeah, how do we determine the boundary for an area?
The census data, they have a mapping tool that's based on the census tract and the block groups. So it's an automatic program that's already assigned based on the US Census. The public service programs are, again, you're usually focused with a nonprofit. There are automatic categories when you have homelessness. Those individuals are considered automatic. Seniors is another group. There's 8 of them, and I never remember all of them. So we have homeless, we have seniors, we have youth at risk when you have a youth at risk program. So we see some programs will do gang targeting for youth, where they'll create programs for educational support or therapy support. That individual would be considered automatically eligible for these funds. You have children's services. You have women at risk when you're dealing with domestic violence. That can also include men, but that's a situation where you can support those types of programs that are automatic. But then you have other programs, like my example of the recreation program, that would be a family who would be a self-certifying family, and then they would provide just minor details related to their income as documentation, and then they would be eligible to participate. And that's how you kind of focus in those programs to the individuals who would qualify to meet that national objective. And those would then be, I think they have to meet a 70% rule on that component. So any questions regarding national objective? It's one of the key areas, and it's really how the funding gets funneled down to how we pick what works and what doesn't work. All right, beautiful.
For Plymouth County for a family of 4.
For Plymouth or Placer? I'm just making sure.
Yeah, for a family of 4, the median income is 130. But 80% of that.
Family of 4, right?
Right. 4,000. Thank you.
If you go ahead.
Mhm. Yeah. So just as a reminder, the primary objective of CDBG is to develop viable communities by helping to provide decent housing, suitable living environments, and expanding opportunities, principally to persons of low to moderate income. So that's our kind of our little brief overview of what their goals are. So now we're giving you this slide with all this little information on it. This is just here to provide you with some ideas. I've covered some of these, but this is just another area where you can just read through to see how creative CDBG funding can be. So we have housing, planning technical assistance, community facilities, public improvements, public services, and we even have a component for Native and American Colonia tribes that are non-recognized that can also access these funds as well. And so based on our conversation around this in the community development section of CDBG, the town is considering an application. So Ron, did you want to talk a little bit about some of the ideas? I know I'm putting you on the spot that you have for the community in this next application cycle, and then we can maybe talk about some other ideas.
Oh, sure. Thank you. So what we looked at to use the money for would be kind of, you have to think about your infrastructure as your base of your city. So as we use the last CGB money, you're seeing going in on the streets over here, working with Beth, we determined that Canyon Way would probably be our next area to redo the streets in. And Canyon Way seemed to fit in all the criteria. We've already gone down the criteria with her and have actually started moving that direction.
So under this next round, we would be looking at an over-the-counter for a maximum of 3.3 million for street improvements. And the 3.3 million includes all of the work associated with putting that together as well. So you have environmentals, you have construction, you have engineering, you have fiscal management, you have our assistants, you have some of the strings that get attached around that to prevailing wage, compliance, things of that nature. So all of that gets wrapped up into that budget of 3.3 million. And I want to say we're about 2.6 million is what you actually put in the ground for those funds, which includes the engineering and the project engineering and the inspection services and things that occur as they're working with that contractor to finish that project and all the work that goes along with managing on that project as well.
Yeah, it would be design, engineering, and then project management.
Thank you. That was very succinct. So that's the idea. So based on our conversation we had, are you all thinking of anything else that in the future we might need to consider, or is there anything else that we need to do some research on to help you meet some of the needs that you're thinking that you have in your community?
I would just say that there are a whole lot of items there
Yes.
under public improvements.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't all have to be infrastructure.
Correct. You have the community facility component that also falls under that. Mm-hmm.
Community centers, architectural barriers, ADA, fire station improvements, senior centers, park improvements. There's a lot of potential there.
There is.
I would
Again, you
like
have to
see
remember
explored.
the location, right, matters because you can't do a citywide project. You have to focus it in on an area that would be
No,
eligible.
I get that. I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
just off the top of my head, the parking lot for our community center is like a minefield. You know, it's full of huge potholes and it's immediately adjacent to streets that we're improving.
Mhm.
So it seems like that would be a good candidate.
Is that where your senior center is as well?
We don't have one.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's not actually our community center. It's the city doesn't own a community center. It's a nonprofit.
Okay.
So we'd have to go that route too.
So yeah, then we could look at the nonprofit
Yeah.
and then the nonprofit then what they would do is look at the services they provide out of that facility. And then we would survey the persons who are using that facility. And if we show that the persons utilizing that facility are members of your community that meet that low mod income criteria, then you could make a grant to them for that.
I think it's as much of the people that can't use it because it's almost unusable.
Right.
But I mean, I would like to see some of those things happen and not that we don't need to fix our streets.
Well, you have 300,000 there that, could be utilized for that type of a project. This would be one that we would look at in the future because of the fact that we would have to collect all that data and then find out if they would be eligible. So that's where we could start and then look at this in your next cycle of funding, once we got that data.
I would say once we have the infrastructure and the roads well taken care of,
Yeah.
then we can branch out because we need the roads and the sewer system and that stuff tip-top shape first, and then we can definitely start exploring some of those other options. So.
Yeah, you have to have a strong infrastructure before you can build your city. You
Yeah.
wouldn't build a house on a weak foundation, and your infrastructure is your foundation to your city. So once the streets and roads are in better shape or rehabbed, then more people want to move here, more businesses want to be here, and more people enjoy the community coming to visit it.
So we'll get Canyon Way and then we'll get South Auburn and then we can talk about the fluffy stuff, right? Okay. Good, but fluffy. Let's get the main stuff done first.
I would say I don't consider a community center fluffy personally.
I say fluffy because it's not something that's used every day by the majority of the community. That's why I say fluffy.
I would explore some of the reasons it's not being used. And so we don't all agree, nor should we.
No.
And so I think what you suggested might be a way that it works, is that it's outside the 3.3 million. We can ask for something else as well.
You can. This, the work that would go into this, you probably don't have time for this round that's coming up, but we could open up conversations to determine if what they are using that for, this nonprofit organization, if it would meet the criteria where you could help them. So that's, I think, the first is that conversation to find out.
So this is my dream. I must admit that's owned by a nonprofit already.
Mhm.
But I visualize a partnership between this nonprofit and the city that could create a viable community center using not only grant money like this, but that center actually has a fund that they could use, but they're almost afraid to use it because there's nowhere near enough money to do the repairs that are needed. But a partnership, anyway, you asked regarding the future, and so that's the context of my
Put on
response.
the list, right? That's just build a list.
I would like us to broaden, if not this time, to think about broadening what we ask money for.
Right, that could make a nice public, private or public,
Mhm.
not private so much, but a community project.
Well, I think to go right along with that, one of the key components was that what needs to be shown is that they're already actively pursuing whatever that project is, correct? So that would give the community center a year
Mhm.
to actively, to decide if the parking lot is what they want and actively start doing that process. And then that way they'll be able to have that history already shown when we're ready to do the next round of it. So that gives them a year.
Well, beyond
to really
that,
start working on it.
their heating and cooling system right now is non-existent. So it's not that that's the only need. They have windows that are coming apart. They have a roof that's leaking. Anyway, that's future consideration, but that could be a beautiful community center. It has the property. A lot of things could be done there. There's open ground there. And I hope we start thinking about those things, because I think fixing the streets is because of how we got here. I mean, this need didn't just happen overnight. We've not had a budget here to really do major repairs on our streets for years and years and years. So we resort to grant money because we don't have any money. So we have the ability to do that. We have a budget. We can divide up our budget any way we want. But again, that's longer term, but I don't want to close the door.
Yep, it's good to have the conversation. Yeah, let me hit really quickly. I didn't go much into support new housing construction, but as you say, we're building a foundation. Once you get this infrastructure in, you could find that you have more interest in the housing new development. And these funds can be used for publicly owned infrastructure. So if you have a subdivision that's wanting to come in as part of their development agreement, you're requiring them to put in sidewalk, curb, gutter, increase a water line, and this is going to be an affordable housing project, you can actually apply for funds under this OTC program to support those public improvements that you've put onto that project to offset their costs. Because you're going to own them, therefore you can use CDBG funds for that and give a grant for that program or that support of that project. So that is a way to potentially entice individuals to come in and develop in the community and build that partnership.
It appears that there's some sidewalk work being done right now, right, along with the street work. I mean, I see them
Yeah.
digging out slopes and things like that. So
Yeah, there's some sidewalk to go along with the new road rehab.
Mhm.
is that same thing going to be true across the freeway there?
The sidewalks that are being repaired because the city trees had destroyed them, which made the city responsible for fixing the sidewalks.
Okay,
So that's how we squeeze that in.
that's good. Good news.
And
Okay.
Canyon Way doesn't have much sidewalk. I mean, there's it's just right there by the subway, right? And the Chevron. There aren't any other sidewalks down there. So I don't think we're adding any. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next slide. And this is talking about the economic development opportunities that you can use the CDBG funds for. Economic development is an area that We can consider an enterprise fund, and that is working with businesses directly. And then you provide them loans, business loans for working capital, land acquisition, equipment purchases, inventory purchases, debt restructuring, and other ways to help them expand their business. The key when working with economic development is it's tied to job creation. So you aren't able just to create a loan program and give loans out. When you give the loan out, for every $35,000, they need to create a job. So there is a component of creating employment with the expansions that you're providing funding for. But you can also apply for technical assistance funds under the CDBG program that you can do studies for, workforce housing programs and other types of supportive programs for your businesses. You can also look at creating some of the training components with economic development under the Planning Technical Assistance Program. For example, in some communities, they saw a need for daycares. So they ran a program where they provided daycare assistance licensing training so that you could have people become licensed in their home to support the daycare needs in a community. So there's different ways that you can provide training. We also had another program, enterprise program, that provided training for businesses on how to market their products so that they could actually get them out into the mainstream retail industry. And they hired a company that was coaching these individuals on how to do these things. We've also seen a farmers market program where they've created some opportunities through farmers markets, and then in turn created entrepreneurship and jobs. So there's always that key component of job creation. They also have an over-the-counter program where you can actually apply direct for a business that is expanding to your community. Could be a large manufacturing company that's coming in, and then you provide support and grant funds to help that happen. Now, this is a very complicated program. It does take a special consultant to work with the city and a business in order to do the underwriting and the things that need to occur when you are making loans to businesses. So my recommendation here with the city would be, if you're interested in something like this, I would say you want to do a planning technical assistance application to help set up a program that writes the guidelines, that sets the structure up, that puts you in a place where you are able to move into these programs and have all of your training and education and documentation and processes in place before you open that door. So just a caveat of my opinion, because it is a complex program. Any questions around that? I think we're focused on streets, but this is a component of CDBG. All right, so this is our time to thank everyone. Do we have anybody online that? No? Okay. No one's raising their hand. All right. Question here? Yes.
On the get in line part, from what I'm understanding is, rather than take a lot of time to bicker about one thing, you could throw 3 things on the application you're thinking about, move forward faster, rather than just get a long thing and go pick that one.
Each application is individual, and on the over the counter, you are limited to 1. So, 1 over the counter, which is the get in line. You can only do 1. You can do 1 project, I think, and 1 program up to 3.3 million, but you aren't able to apply for like multiple street projects. So they definitely limit you in that aspect of it.
Rental acquisition up there, the advent of Airbnb, people buying properties
Would not qualify. Yeah.
We have a state party issue here, and what I understand you were saying about funding, that could fund the support stuff around it, like access and water and the lights, whatever is that.
For a skate park? For a city skate park, that would be a citywide project, and that wouldn't qualify for the low mod component currently. based on your low mod criteria. Mhm. If you had 4 skate parks and they were neighborhood skate parks and it was in a neighborhood that met that, we'd be good to go. But with 1 skate park, we would call that a citywide project. Just to kind of give a little idea of how that works. As a business, yes. Yes, that would be, and then again, that is a very complex process because of the underwriting criteria. There is a lot of engagement with the owner, the plans that would be taking place, how they would be utilizing it, the number of jobs they would create around that. But there is a direct access for that type of a concern. Mhm. This is a federal program that passes through the state, yes. So yes, it's a part of your public record. We would actually, we're going to come back for approval. So this is our engagement, trying to let the community know what's happening. We do quite a big marketing campaign, but as usual, unless you're raising water rates, nobody shows up. So, I always laugh and say, let's put that on the water rate conversation meeting and, and have the conversation with CDBG first. But it's very difficult for us to get that engagement. So we do this, we try to, bring cookies and, bring that limelight. But sometimes we'll get engagement when you are doing projects. People, start to become more and more familiar with it. A lot of times they're just happy with what you're doing and just, are out there cheering you on and don't need to make any comments about it. So I'm really happy to have you here and to have the people online here to listen and to, Mhm. Mhm.
And being a territory man covering a very wide area, and people asking me where I live, and I tell them about in town, and they can say, good one.
Yeah.
So we've always had an identity problem
Mhm.
that I'm aware of. And being that the city is a business, would it be possible for some of that application to be used to re-identify ourselves to get business, get people, to get tourism?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so the planning technical assistance application under the economic development program has been utilized in the past to help cities create marketing and outreach to businesses. That hasn't been something I've seen in the last probably 7 years, but in the past it has been. So I would have to do a little bit of homework to see if the new management is encouraging that as a part of your planning technical assistance program, but in the past it has been. So, yeah, marketing, right? All right, beautiful. So if you do have more questions, if you think of something, this is more for our community at large, that you didn't ask or you have an idea that comes to you, then we just ask that you email the city clerk at city.clerk@colfax-ca.gov. And that's included on our slide here within the next few weeks. And then what we will do is take those and research and get answers and get those back out to anybody who's interested. Or if you just have a comment that you want to drop in, we would appreciate any feedback. And even feedback of, you're doing a great job. We love your ideas. Keep moving forward. And that would be great too, just to let us know that we're on the right track.
I would like one thing. This is simple. Under public improvements, it says all publicly owned. And I just wonder, is there a better definition of that? Publicly owned is really
Infrastructure.
pretty broad.
Right. It is very broad and it includes your lighting. It includes your storm drainage.
But no, I mean, my emphasis is on the publicly part. Does that mean it must be owned by the city?
City, yeah.
Or the county, or
It would be the city.
can it be a partnership?
Yes. So for example, you have CAL FIRE and you have the city, so that could be a partnership.
Mhm.
If you have a water district here, but I believe you have your own city water. It's not a district. No, it's a district. So you could support your district because that's quasi-public usually. Is it private or quasi-public? Your water district. Usually it's a nonprofit. So, or some sort of a affiliation. So you can, yeah, that's something that you could potentially do. So it just depends on the makeup of that partner and
Can
and
it be
the
a
city.
nonprofit?
Absolutely. Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
I
Yeah, it's
mean, the NFL is a nonprofit.
they certainly are.
Yeah.
They certainly are. It's all about who you serve, right? It's all about who you serve. So.
So question, because
Mhm.
Harry brought up the skate park. If the skate park still stayed underneath the 501(c)(3) and wasn't a city owned project necessarily, would they then qualify for those?
It's about the users at the skate park.
Right. So,
So-
but wouldn't it be just like the community center where then you would figure out who the users are and do that kind of a study?
It's a little more difficult with a skate park.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because every child in the city it can go out and use
Right.
it. There's not a entrance process.
Okay.
It's just open to the public.
Okay.
So that's where it becomes a little.
That's why I was
difficult.
curious. I was like, well,
Yeah.
wait a minute, hold on. Let's see how that.
Yeah, at a community center, you usually have events, you
Mhm.
have planned
Classes and stuff.
Exactly. And so you can focus it in on how they're utilizing the center. You could have senior pottery classes, you could
Uh-huh.
have, educational classes. And for example, adults who don't read and they're
Mhm.
having reading courses and,
Right.
so then you're able to focus in on the persons who are utilizing.
Okay. And somebody's watching you because you've got 73 views on the Facebook post.
Oh,
So
great.
somebody's paying attention.
Good. That's great news. I appreciate that. So yeah, send those comments, even in the chat. You can let us know in the chat. We'll screenshot it. And that's so important because the state does look at our engagement and our outreach. And that is a part of our citizens participation requirement, which is a threshold item. So any support that we can get showing that you are interested and you are listening to what we're saying. If you have ideas, we really appreciate that engagement.
So you want screenshots of the Facebook conversation when this was posted on the local
Oh, that would be
community page?
fantastic. Yes,
Okay.
that would be fantastic. So thank you. Thank you. So the final few slides that we have here are requirements of things that that we must go over as a part of our CDBG life. And the first one is the review of the status of the local housing element. And many people in the community don't realize that we have these great documents as a part of our general plan of the city. And one of those documents is a housing element, which drives a lot of what occurs within your city related to housing. And we just want everyone to know that this was updated and it is a 2021 to 2029 document, and it is available online at the City of Colfax website. And we put the link in the slide here. If you are interested in what that looks like for your community, please access that and take a peek. So that's just sharing that information. Our next slide is related to residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan. And the city is required to have this in place. And this is something that we'll be bringing forward to the council in the future to make sure that this gets put in place. And what this particular plan does, it's an assurance that if a project that is being considered or implemented requires the relocation of individuals related to housing or businesses, that they will follow the code under 24 CFR 42.325, and that notices will be put out properly, and that there's a whole law that covers how this occurs so that no one is caught off guard in regards to having to relocate because of a project. And that could be temporary relocation or a permanent relocation. So this is just letting you know that the city will have a plan in place. Our projects currently do not invoke or trigger this, but it is something that the city will have taken care of in order to meet the requirements of CDBG. And then our final slide is something that we started to speak about first off in our meeting tonight, and that's furthering fair housing and fair housing resources. As part of CDBG, remember they are a part of HUD at the federal level, and the whole component of HUD is to further fair housing and to ensure that fair housing is occurring within our communities. And to understand and know where those resources are, if you are or believe that you've had discrimination related to housing, you need to know how to access help in those situations. So we have provided some resources here in the slide on some phone numbers that you can reach out to, as well as here at City Hall in their foyer. They do have handouts for victims of of fair housing discrimination and how to file a complaint either by mail or online. And then there's also some posters that can educate you as well. So those are resources that are available. Or you can reach out to the city. They'll connect you with us, and then we can help guide you as well in how to get that information. All right, well, that concludes my presentation this evening for you. And I really appreciate all of the conversation, and again, encourage more comments to be issued. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Ron, and we're going to talk a little bit about, I think, alternatives, and then some of the fiscal impacts, and then kind of what our next steps are going to be. Do you want to take that, Ron? No? Okay, I'll take that for you. Okay, you got it. All right. So this evening was about sharing what you're anticipating, having that conversation. One of the reasons that we're here in front of you in this public forum, and then we're going to be bringing forward to you in your next council meeting, is to let you know kind of what these ideas are. And then we're going to be looking for some direction and approvals to move forward with that project, because the city is going to need to allocate some costs associated with that to get that design done, to get that environmental done, so that we are ready for that application cycle. Our application due date will be at the end of August. So the cost associated with preparing the application is $7,500. That's what we charge for that application. And that doesn't include the environmental or engineering costs. So we are working at getting those numbers together for you to be able to present that to you at your next meeting. This public meeting's on June 5th. We'll wait until your next meeting, and then we'll wait until the NOFA is released at the end of July before we come back to you with a resolution of approval. We want to make sure that we get the published NOFA just in case they do a little sidestep on us and change something. We want to make sure that we present to you the actual information is the way that they want it to be presented as part of the 2024 published NOFA. The information we have right now is what they're sharing with us. And then once it's published, then we know they won't change it. So no action is required this evening, but just to let you know what that timeline looks like. Okay. All right. Beautiful. Thank you. Cookies.
Yes, thank you very much. Right.
You're the one that's gotta sign in.
Turn off your-
You gotta sign in, Aaron.
Okay.
Yep, so
Meeting is over. Is this being recorded? Because tomorrow morning, and you're probably going to go there too, the Chamber of Commerce, I'm going to urge them to watch the video because they missed it tonight. So, and the same with Sierra Community Center.
Right, yeah.
I was hoping that-
about the community center, possible money to go along in addition to the streets.
it's, I think it's a great place to put it. Foundation. I totally agree with that. You just gotta what's right.
And you're turning. So.
Trying to stay out of it.
Yeah.